Hey there! Thanks for clicking on my story. I promise to make this an interesting one. Now, I know you've read the title and you're probably thinking that there was some mean girl at high school picking on me and making my life miserable. Promise not to laugh when I tell you who my real bully was? Promise? Okay, it was my little sister Melanie. She was 12 years old and I swear she was like the child of Satan himself. Satan and a really horrible woman because I swear I couldn't understand how we had the same parents and similar genes. We were so different. I was 16 years old, so we only had 4 years between us. I was bigger, taller, and smarter, but you don't need to be big to be a bully. You just have to be mean. And that was Melanie. But before I continue my story, would you please like the video and subscribe to the channel? It would mean a lot to me if you hit that notification bell too. Thanks, you're the best. Now, you're probably wondering what this 12-year-old could have done to me that was so horrible. There's just so much. Where do I even start? I'll start by giving you some different situations. When she was 4 and I was 8, she started hitting me. She did this when my parents were not looking, and they'd never believe me when I told them what she was doing. Sometimes she'd just be like,
"Hey, Katie, turn around. Look what I brought you."
And I'd turn around, and she'd just smack me in the face with a handful of mud. I didn't hit back because I was supposed to be the older one, and I was a really calm person who never liked violence. But one day, I really couldn't take it anymore. We were sitting, watching TV, and her favorite show had just finished. I took the remote because I wanted to watch something else. It was my turn after all, and she pulled it back from me and hit me in the face with it. I pulled it back from her and did the same to her. Harder, because I was bigger. She started screaming and wailing all the way upstairs to my parents, who scolded me for being a horrible big sister. But she hit me first.
That's not true. Melanie would never hit anyone. She's such a good girl.
My mom was delusional. My dad looked a bit suspicious, but he didn't say anything to her, and I was grounded. But that was fine because I didn't like going out anyway. I liked to sit in my room and read. But Melanie just became more and more annoying. She'd always eat my snacks and she left her toys everywhere. She'd scream at me so I'd pick them up. I don't know why I was so soft, but I just was, and I listened to her. As we got older, she pretended to be too young to do any chores, and she left everything for me to do. And she just continued becoming more and more evil. Sometimes, if I said or did something she didn't agree with, she'd barge into my room and destroy my stuff. I'll never forget this super cool solar system model I had created for our science fair the next day. I was sure my teacher would be so impressed and proud of me. Well, do you know what Melanie did? She pulled out all the planets and stepped on them. It was too late to do another one and I was just devastated. I was so devastated that I cried all night and my mom didn't believe me. She thought I destroyed it by myself, but that made no sense. Sometimes my dad would stand up for me when Melanie was being wicked, but I just wished he'd do it more often. So, fast forward a bit to when I was in high school, and Melanie was just starting middle school. Now, I didn't really mind Melanie's awfulness as much when it didn't affect my social life at school, but what she did next made me realize it was time for a change. In the morning, I'd usually lay the clothes I intended to wear on the bed, then I'd go to shower. So that particular morning, I put on my clothes after I left the shower and went straight to school. I noticed Melanie laughing a bit, but I figured that she was just being stupid as usual. When I got to school and walked through the hallway, I noticed that everyone was staring at me. First they stared, then they got out their phones and started recording and laughing.
"Oh my God, Katie!"
My best friend Paula said while pushing me near the girls' bathroom and covering my pants with her backpack until we got inside safely. What's going on? Why is everyone laughing at me?
"There is a huge hole in your pants. We can all see your bright orange underwear. How didn't you notice this?"
It was fine when I put it on the bed this morning. Oh no, that brat Melanie. She must have cut a hole in it when I went to the shower.
I think she's taken it a bit too far this time. Don't you think it's about time you taught her a lesson?
Yes, Paula, but I don't know how.
Do what you always do. Sit down and make a list. I'm tired of watching your life get ruined because of a silly child. That video is going to go viral. How are you ever going to get a boyfriend now if you're the laughingstock of the school? Ugh, I'm sorry, but we've got to do something about her,
Paula replied. Luckily, she had a pair of gym shorts in her bag, and she let me wear them for the rest of my most humiliating day at school. When I got home that afternoon, Melanie saw my shorts.
Nice shorts. What happened to your pants?
You've taken it too far this time. I went to my room to create a plan, but luckily, I didn't have to think too much. Melanie was having a sleepover that night, and 3 of her little snotty friends came over. When it was about 9 o'clock that night, and my mom had sent them to bed, I listened through the door to hear what they were talking about.
Melanie, Andy was totally checking you out today. Really? Yeah, I think he likes you too. I'm too nervous to talk to him. You just gotta have courage. We believe in you.
As her little friends chuckled and encouraged her, I realized I'd found her weakness. She liked a boy. I walked back to my room and got started on my plan. In no time, I had found Andy's Instagram handle, Snapchat, TikTok, and he even had Facebook. I thought kids nowadays thought that was old-fashioned. I made an Instagram profile pretending to be my sister and sent him a message. I was going to set them up, then break them up in an awful way. What? She deserved it. I sent him a message immediately. Hey Andy, it's Melanie. I think you're really cute. Would you consider going out with me? I could see that he was online, but he didn't reply until the next day.
Okay.
He didn't seem very enthusiastic. I'm having a party at my house later. You could come if you want, I replied.
Sure. Send me the address. I'll have my dad drop me over.
Later that day, I made sure I was the first one home from school. I decorated the house with a few balloons and started cooking dinner. When my parents and Melanie got home, they were pleasantly surprised.
What's the occasion?
My mom asked. Oh, nothing. I just decided to be nice. I also put your clothes in the washing machine, Melanie, I said. Well, I didn't put all her clothes in there, just the nice ones to make sure she wore something old and ugly. When everyone was seated at the dinner table, I heard the doorbell ring. I'll get it! I screamed and jumped out of my chair. I opened the door and there Andy was, a funny-looking little guy.
Is this Melanie's house? I thought there was a party tonight.
Well, yes it is. She invited you? That's weird.
Why?
Well, it's just family, and we're celebrating because she hasn't wet the bed for a whole month.
What?
Yes, she's been wearing diapers since she was born, and she never grew out of them. But it's been a month since she's had to use them, so we're having a big celebration. She must really trust you if she asked you to come. Anyway, come in, have a seat. I smiled. When I walked to the table with Andy, Melanie sat in shock.
Hi, Melanie.
He said.
I'm so happy I get to celebrate this special occasion with you.
What occasion?
Aw, you don't have to be ashamed. It's okay, I won't tell anyone.
He said.
You invited a boy over?
My mom said, shocked. Melanie didn't reply. She was too shocked. Also, my parents had a no dating until you're 16 rule, so I knew they were boiling inside, but they were probably just as confused as Melanie, and they were trying to be polite to the strange boy. After dinner, Melanie ran up to her room for a while, and I invited Andy to the living room to sit down. I used this as the perfect opportunity for more mischief. I went back to the kitchen pretending to get him a snack. Then I took out my phone and sent a message to Andy from Melanie's fake account. Do you want to hang out at the mall with me tomorrow? Melanie came back downstairs and sat next to him. I listened from afar.
What time do you want to go to the mall tomorrow?
He asked.
What? Are you asking me out?
Okay. If you want to put it that way, fine.
Is 4 p.m. okay?
Yeah, I guess.
And that was that. Later that night, after Andy had left, I heard Melanie snickering on the phone with her friends.
Andy showed up at my house. No, I don't know how it happened. He asked me out too, to the mall, tomorrow. Of course, I know I'm not allowed to date. I'll just tell my parents I'm at the library or something. They won't think I'm lying. I'm their perfect little girl.
The next day, I made sure to go to the mall just before 4. Melanie was sitting near the food court all by herself looking a bit nervous. Then Andy approached her, and her eyes lit up. I took out my phone and took many pictures of them. I followed them all over the mall and even took a few videos too. Then I posed as one of my mom's friends and sent her all the pictures with the message, "Is this your little girl? Isn't 12 a little too young to be dating?" I went home to wait for the storm. When Melanie got home, both my mom and dad were sitting on the couch with a very stern expression on their faces.
Melanie, where are you?
My dad said.
At the library, like I told you, remember? So, explain this.
My mom said while showing her the pictures. Melanie looked horrified.
First, you bring a boy here without even asking us, and now you're lying to sneak out with him? I thought we raised you better than that. But, shut up! Go to your room!
My mom screamed. I laughed really loudly, then went to my room to plan more mischief. I wasn't done yet, obviously. I quickly sent a message to Andy. Hey, I can't see you anymore because my friend Sandra really likes you. She wants you to ask her out tomorrow. He replied instantly.
Whoa, Sandra's so hot. Thanks for letting me know.
Later that night, while feeling very satisfied with myself, I walked near my parents' bedroom and heard them talking. I don't know why, but I got my phone out and started recording the conversation. It sounded like they were arguing.
I don't know if I can do this anymore. You're not doing much to discipline that child, and she's getting out of control.
My dad said.
But you don't do anything to help.
But she's not even my kid.
Robert!
I tried to raise her as my own, but the truth is she's nothing like me. This would never have happened if you hadn't had that stupid affair. I don't know why I didn't divorce you immediately.
I gasped. So Satan really was Melanie's father, huh? I stopped the recording and sent it straight to Melanie's phone. Then I barged into my parents' room. I heard everything. So Melanie is only my half-sister? Dad, what are you waiting for? Divorce this woman and take me away with you.
That is unacceptable, young woman.
My mom screamed. Be quiet, cheater. Melanie has been the most horrible sister in the universe, and you've always defended her. This is why? Because she's some special prize from an affair? You cheated on Dad. Melanie walked into the room with tears in her eyes.
Is it true?
She cried.
Oh, honey, I'm so sorry.
My mom said while trying to hug her. I looked at my dad, and we both knew it was time. It's been 2 years since then, and we are living happily 3 states away from my mom and her awful child, Melanie. She experienced 2 heartbreaks before the divorce was final, though. That she wasn't who she thought she was, and also that Andy was way more into her friend Sandra than he ever was into her. I didn't mean for it to get this far, but hey, she asked for it, right? Hopefully she's trying to become a better person.
I didn't know I had a sister.
Well, you do. She was away at school.
My brother walked up to me.
Hi, my name is Tyler. What's yours?
My name is Cassidy.
That's a very pretty name. Thank you for the gift.
He threw his arms around my waist and I hugged him back as I struggled to hold back my tears. Hi there, my name is Cassidy. Before I continue my crazy story, give us a thumbs up and smash that notification bell so you will get updates when we post other crazy stories like mine. For many years, my parents tried having children but were unsuccessful. They depleted their nest egg by visiting a variety of doctors, doing numerous tests and doing multiple fertility implants. When they finally got the great news that mom was pregnant, they were so excited. They both wanted a boy, and when the ultrasound indicated that wish might come true, my parents took great care to make sure mom and the baby were safe. On the day that my mother was rushed to the delivery room, my parents were so excited. Until I was born. Yep, you guessed it. I wasn't a boy, and their disappointment in me was never hidden and continued throughout my entire life. Mom, look at this! A 5-year-old me ran towards the kitchen one afternoon from preschool.
What is it?
Mom asked dryly. I took the medals from around my neck and handed it to her. Today was the last day of preschool for me, and I got quite a few awards. I was so happy and excited to go home and tell my parents.
What are these?
Miss calls them my medals of achievement. Aren't they pretty? My eyes widened and twinkled as I focused on them. I looked on in horror as Mom took my medals over to the trash and dumped them.
Those medals aren't going to get you anywhere. Now go upstairs, have a bath, and come back and help me with dinner.
As time went on, my parents constantly mistreated me. I never got new clothes, went anywhere with them, or even had any pictures. When I was 10, Mom got pregnant. But this time, they didn't want to know the sex of the baby until it was born. I became Mom's gopher, and during her last trimester, I stayed at home to help her. She told the school that she would homeschool me, but she never did. Finally, Mom delivered a healthy baby boy. When she arrived home, I ran to the door to greet her and my baby brother.
Get away from him, you filthy child!
Mom screamed as I tried to get a look at the baby. Early next morning, Dad packed up my clothes and dropped me off at Stanford Academy. I sat outside while he spoke to an elderly woman in the office. When he left, he didn't even look back. No goodbyes, no hugs, no kisses. The elderly woman walked out of the office.
Good morning, Cassidy. My name is Dr. Leopold. I am the director of this school. At this school, we train you to become the wives of very rich and very successful men. Once you reach 18, you will be married.
Married? My voice cracked.
Yes, dear. You're going to make some wealthy man very happy one day. As long as you do everything we tell you to do, you will be okay.
I shared a room with 6 other girls, some older and some younger. I was given a uniform. The only thing I wore other than that was a nightgown to sleep in. My days were filled with classes that taught us that we were to be obedient to our husbands at all times, and as a wife, it was our duty to serve and take care of them. We had so many household chores to do that by the end of the day, my knuckles were bruised. As far as academics, we were taught how to read and write. That was it. No math, no history, no nothing. I eventually made a few friends, but my best friend was Martha. She was at the school a year before I arrived. She showed me the ins and outs of maneuvering throughout the Stanford school system. Every day, I wrote a letter to my parents and sent it to Dr. Leopold for her to mail it. But my parents never wrote back. And after the first year, I just stopped writing. Over the years, I saw my friends line up and be chosen by men who looked over 50. Once chosen, she was taken to the office with her intended and Dr. Leopold for a few minutes before she was left with him. About a month after my 18th birthday, Dr. Leopold called me to her office. Upon entering, I saw an older couple sitting opposite Dr. Leopold. "Good day, ma'am. You wanted to see me?" Dr. Leopold nodded at the parents, who stood up and thoroughly inspected me as though I were cattle. It was the most humiliating day of my life.
We'll purchase her.
I just stood there as they made their transactions. After about 30 minutes, I left with my future in-laws. As I looked back at the school, I knew I would never see those girls again. We boarded a plane and left the country. I was woken up a few hours later and immediately prepared for my wedding. I wore a fancy wedding dress and veil. I didn't know any of the bridesmaids or flower girls. As I walked down the aisle with my father-in-law, my chest tightened. Not one friend or family member of mine was seated in the congregation. This was not how I imagined my wedding day to be. I paused for a moment and my arm was tugged slightly to keep moving, which I did. I reached the altar and my hand was placed into that of the groom. I looked at him shyly from behind my veil. He looked a few years older than me with kind eyes and a sweet smile. During the ceremony, I stood there and thought about how drastically my life was going to change. I was jolted back to the present when the pastor said,
"Now you may kiss the bride."
My heart galloped as Ross, my husband, lifted the veil. He pressed his lips lightly against mine before pulling away slowly. I blushed. Once the ceremony was over, we took dozens of pictures before we headed to the reception. As we pulled up to the mansion, my jaw dropped. It was immaculate. The pillars, the colors, the yard.
This is my parents' home. They insisted we have the reception here.
We were escorted to the grand ballroom where our guests were waiting. After the formalities of the reception, Ross looked at me.
I would like to show you something.
I allowed him to take my hand and he guided me to the backyard. It was full of fountains and different types of flowers on hedges. We walked through a hedged maze until we got to a bench where we sat.
How do you like it?
Ross placed my arm at the back of the bench, but he didn't touch me. This place is amazing. It seems surreal.
So, tell me about yourself.
I went on to tell Ross about my childhood and what my parents did to me and the 8 years I spent at the Stanford Academy.
My parents paid for you? They told me they had a friend who had a daughter and they wanted us to blend families. I agreed because I trusted my parents' judgment. I'm so sorry they did that to you. I'm also sorry your parents treated you so horribly.
My trials led me to you, so it was worth it. He kissed me again and we chatted for a few minutes before heading back to the reception. Over the next few months, Ross took care of me in a way that made me realize that everything I learned about being a wife was wrong. It was hard to unlearn some things, and I'm still unlearning, but Ross is guiding me along. He even suggested that we purchase a home close to my hometown and visit my parents. I was against it at first, but Ross and I came up with a plan and I agreed. When we arrived at my parents' house after 9 years of not seeing them, I was nervous. I squeezed the straps of the bag I was holding. Ross knocked on the door.
You'll be fine.
Ross squeezed my hands and smiled. Dad opened the door and the uneasiness on his face was evident.
Hi.
Hi, Dad. This is my husband, Ross. Can we come in? Ross extended his hand to Dad, who shook it. Hesitantly, Dad looked at Ross.
Sure, come in. Honey,
Dad yelled.
we have guests.
A little boy came running into the room with an airplane in his hands. Hi, I smiled at him.
Hi, who are you?
I looked across at Dad, who nodded at me to go ahead. I'm yours. Mom walked in just then, and I jumped up from my seat and Ross stood next to me. Hi, Mom. I pushed Ross in front of me. This is my husband, Ross. He extended his hand, but Mom ignored it and turned to Dad.
What is she doing here?
Ross intervened as he took the bag from me.
We bought some gifts for you.
Ross handed out the gifts as my parents and my brother opened their gifts. We purchased a diamond set for my mom, necklace, bracelet, and earrings. For Dad, we purchased a Balmoral 1957 Scotch whiskey and a Rolex. For my brother, we purchased a remote control helicopter.
Go and tell your sister thank you.
Mom nudged my brother towards me.
I didn't know I had a sister.
Well, you do. She was away at school.
My brother walked up to me.
Hi, my name is Tyler. What's yours?
My name is Cassidy.
That's a very pretty name. Thank you for the gift.
He threw his arms around my waist and I hugged him back as I struggled to hold back my tears. Honestly, the day went better than I expected. I helped Mom make dinner while Ross, Dad, and Tyler were outside flying the helicopter. As we headed to the door to leave, Mom hugged Ross and me.
It was so nice having you here. If you're free next Saturday, maybe we can go out to dinner.
Ross and I agreed. We thanked them for the day and left.
You see, I told you everything would have been okay.
Ross held my hand as we walked towards the car. The next 6 months were amazing. I not only rebuilt my relationship with my parents, but I was able to build a relationship with my brother. I purchased gifts for my parents and Tyler every time I met with them. One afternoon, while sitting in the car in my parents' driveway, Ross turned to me.
Do you think now is a good time to speak with your parents about the business proposal?
I think now is the perfect time. I'm sure they'll be willing to take the leap. Our weekly dinner date with my family was great. After dinner, when Tyler went to watch television and the adults were still sitting around the dining room table, Ross popped the question to my parents.
Can I run a business proposal by you? I think it would be something that would be of interest to you. Sure, Ross, go ahead.
Dad nodded.
Well, some business associates and I are looking for people who are interested in working overseas. You get $250,000 up front, and you'll be overseeing staff and events, but it has the potential to be $1 million profit.
Ross went on further to discuss what will be expected of them, how soon they'll need to be on site, pay, as well as days off and everything else business-wise.
My lawyers already looked it over. I can leave you a copy if you want to read it over. We only have a few spaces left.
Oh, well, if your lawyer already looked it over, then I'm sure it's fine.
Okay, great. Let me get it from the car.
Ross ran to the car to get it while Dad and Mom chatted excitedly. Ross returned a few minutes later with the documents and a pen. My parents didn't even read the documents, they just signed where Ross told them to sign. He told them that they would be hearing from the other stakeholders in a few days to finalize the next part of the proposal. A few minutes later, Ross and I left, excited for what would happen in the near future. A few days later, after Ross and I had dinner with my parents, Ross took Tyler for ice cream. My parents and I were watching television when the doorbell rang. A few minutes later, after they left, there was a knock on the door. Mom went to open it and I followed close behind. Mom opened the door.
Good evening. May I help you?
There stood 3 men in suits. One replied,
Good evening. We are here for Mr. and Mrs. Moore.
I'm Mrs. Moore. What is this about?
It's about the contract that you signed.
Oh, right. You must be the other stakeholders that Ross told us about. Do come in.
The 3 men stepped onto the living room and the man asked,
Are you and Mr. Moore ready to leave? Sheikh Rashid and Sheikh Salama will be leaving on a trip in 2 weeks. They require all their staff to be on board and trained before they leave.
Another man stepped forward.
We need to leave now so you can catch a plane to Saudi Arabia so you can meet your new employer. What are you talking about?
Dad looked confused. The man pulled out documents from his briefcase and showed them to my parents.
Are these your signatures?
After inspecting them, they agreed that it was. The man explained that they were now the property of Sheikh Rashid. The 2 other men grabbed Mom and Dad and dragged them outside.
You can't do this to us.
It's a legally binding contract, ma'am, and if we get you them on time, we will be paid $5 billion.
That they will. I finally broke my silence and my parents looked at me. You'll get the same love and affection that you've shown me the first 18 years of my life. That's how long your contract is for. I turned to the man with the briefcase. "Let me know as soon as you make the drop-off." The man nodded and hopped into the driver's seat of the van while my parents were pushed into the back. When Ross and Tyler returned, I told Tyler that these stakeholders came and Mom and Dad just left. I told Tyler that he will live with me until Mom and Dad returned. When Tyler ran to his room to pack his bags, Ross pulled me close.
See, babe, I told you everything would work out.
I nodded, though I still felt a twinge of sadness in that moment. Why couldn't my parents have loved me for me?
It was the end of the first day back at school after the long summer holidays, and I couldn't wait for it to be over. The holidays had been so much fun. We had spent most of the time at the beach, and it was all I could think about. As I walked home, my mind was full of wonderful memories. Suddenly, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a homeless family on the other side of the street. I was about to keep on walking, but something made me stop. In that moment, I realized just how lucky I was. I had a fabulous life compared to that poor family. I crossed the street and went over to where they were standing. I put my hand into my pocket and pulled out a $20 bill. They had a son about my age. I handed the money to him, and as he took it out of my hand, he looked up and smiled at me. I nearly gasped out loud. He had the most beautiful eyes I had ever seen. But before I go on, you won't forget to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell, will you?
Thank you, miss.
You're welcome. I haven't seen you here before. Do you live around here?
We recently moved to this area. We used to live on the other side of town.
Oh, well, that's why I wouldn't have seen you then. Will you be here tomorrow? I might see you again on my way home from school. He seemed a little bit embarrassed, especially when the man beside him started speaking to me.
It's very kind of you, young lady. We really appreciate it. Don't we, Toby?
The boy nodded.
This is my dad.
Pleased to meet you. Well, I'd better be getting off home now. See you tomorrow. I gave them a wave and walked off up the street. When I got home, I couldn't stop thinking about the boy and his beautiful eyes. I didn't care that he was homeless. I mean, people can end up in situations like that through no fault of their own. His dad had seemed like such a nice man, very polite. I felt sure that they were good people. When the bell went at the end of school the following day, I rushed straight out of the school gates and headed towards where the boy and his family had been the day before. I actually felt a bit nervous, to tell you the truth. My stomach was full of butterflies. When I turned the corner and saw them standing on the other side of the street, my heart did a flip. Yes, they're here. I crossed over and handed them another $20 bill.
No, we can't take it. It's too much.
Don't be silly. Anyway, it's not for me. It's from my mom. I told her about you and she asked me to give it to you.
Well, if you're sure.
I am. The boy took the money from me and put it into his pocket. He looked even more embarrassed than he had done the day before. I didn't want him to feel bad, so I made an excuse that I had to be home for dinner and then left them to it. When I got home, I told my mom that I had met up with the family again. I think I'm going to sort out some stuff to give to them. Our garage is full of things that we never use. I'm sure that they could make use of them.
Good idea, Becky. I'll sort out a few bits for them too.
The following day was Saturday, so I spent the whole morning putting together a bag full of odds and ends for them. But when I handed the boy a bag of things, he looked sad.
I'm sorry, I can't accept this.
But you have to. It's only stuff that's been sitting around gathering dust in our garage. It's much better to see someone making use of it. He looked so unhappy that it almost broke my heart. Please take it. It would make me so happy if you did.
Okay then, I will. Thank you.
He looked up and smiled at me. I felt like I was on cloud 9. My heart started beating 10 to the dozen and my stomach flipped over. That's when it hit me like a ton of bricks. Oh my God, I think I'm in love with this boy. I had never felt like that about anyone ever before. It was hard to know if I really was in love, but I knew one thing for sure. I wanted to see more and more of him. I took a deep breath and pulled on all of my inner strength. Would you like to go out with me? I waited for what seemed like an eternity for him to answer, but when I heard what he said, my heart nearly broke in two.
Sorry, no, I'm not interested.
I really wanted the ground to open up and swallow me. I mumbled something about having errands to run and ran off home. When I got home, I ran up to my room and threw myself onto my bed. I buried my head into the pillow and started sobbing and sobbing. I couldn't believe that he didn't want to see me. I had thought we had been getting on really well. I'd obviously misread the signs badly. On Monday morning, I pretended to my mom that I had a stomachache. I really don't feel that good, Mom.
Well, maybe you should take the day off school. You go back up to bed, and I will call the principal and let him know.
I know it wasn't nice of me to lie to my mom, but I just couldn't face seeing everyone at school. My eyes were swollen from crying so much, and I knew my friends would keep on and on at me until they found out what was the matter with me. I just needed a few more days to get over him, and then I would be fine. In the meantime, I just stayed in my room, hiding from everyone. By Wednesday evening, I was starting to feel a bit better. I was still very sad that he had rejected me, but I felt that I would be able to go back to school. I'm feeling a lot better today, Mom. I'm sure I'll be fine to go to school tomorrow.
Oh, that's good, Becky. You had me worried there for a while.
There's no need to worry, Mom. I'm fine, honestly. After dinner, I went back up to my room. I switched on my laptop and was about to start some work when I heard a knocking at my window. What's that? I went over to the window and opened it. You will not believe who was standing in my garden. Toby, the homeless boy. What do you want?
I just want to explain to you
Explain what?
why I can't date you. It's not that I don't like you. It's just that I don't want you dating someone who's homeless. You deserve better than that.
But I don't care. I want you. He just sighed, shook his head, and left. The next day after school, I decided I would go and find Toby and his family. But when I got to their usual place, they were nowhere to be seen. I looked up and down the street, but I couldn't see them anywhere. I felt really disappointed, but there was no use hanging around. They had obviously found a new place to stand. I was just about to walk off when I felt someone tap me on my shoulder. I turned around and saw some rich boy standing behind me. I could tell from the clothes he was wearing and his expensive-looking sunglasses that he came from a very wealthy family. Sorry, do I know you? He reached up and took off his sunglasses. Toby! I would recognize those beautiful eyes anywhere. What's going on? I don't understand.
I'm sorry I didn't tell you the truth before, Becky. I'm not really homeless. I actually come from a very rich family, but I had to disguise myself as homeless as there are some mean people who are looking for me, so I had to hide.
But I met your dad. I mean, he's obviously a really nice guy, but he definitely doesn't look wealthy.
That wasn't my dad. That's my bodyguard. He's also pretending to be homeless so he could keep an eye on me.
But why did you lie to me?
I'm really sorry. I just had to get to know you better before I could let you in on my secret. Can you forgive me?
I hesitated for a bit. If there is one thing I hate, it's lying. But he definitely had a good reason, so I decided to forgive him. Okay, I forgive you. So does this mean you will go out with me then? He smiled at me, his beautiful eyes shining brightly.
Sure.
We started dating and it was wonderful. He was everything I had ever dreamed of. But there was just one thing that wasn't quite right. He never ever invited me to his home. Why can't we ever hang out at your house? Why do you always come to my house?
It's just too dangerous for you. I can't risk you getting hurt. If any of these mean people see you, they might try to do something to you to get back at me.
I accepted what he said, even though I still had some niggling doubts in my mind. Okay, I understand that you want to protect me, and I really appreciate it. But can you answer something else for me, please?
What?
How come you wear the exact same clothes all of the time? You never wear anything different.
I can't. I don't have time to be able to go home to change my clothes.
Oh, right. I guess that does make sense. But even though I said that, I honestly didn't believe it. Surely he would be able to get some of his other clothes somehow. I started to get really suspicious about him. He always acted really shady when I asked him anything about his life. He would immediately change the subject and start talking about something random. I wanted to trust him, but he wasn't making it easy for me. Eventually, I couldn't handle the doubt anymore. I decided that I would follow him home when he left my house that night. See you tomorrow then.
Sure. Same time, same place.
Bye.
Bye.
I waited until he had got about 10 meters down the street. Then I crept out of the house and started following him. I made sure to keep my distance so that he wouldn't see me. At one point, he turned to look back, but I managed to duck between two parked cars. I was surprised to see that he was heading towards the place where I had first met him. I wonder why he's going there. He stopped, and I watched as he changed out of his clothes and into the ragged old clothes that he had worn before. Then I noticed his bodyguard walking over to him.
Where have you been, son? Just out. Come on, we better get to sleep. We need to be up early in the morning to get to the food drive. Okay, Dad.
I was completely shocked at what I had just heard. So that man is his father. He's not a bodyguard. And if they're so rich, why would they be going to a food drive? I'm beginning to think that he actually is homeless. I spent all of the next day going over and over in my head the scene I had witnessed the night before. When Toby arrived at my house, I was ready for him. I've got something to ask you, and I want to know the truth. No more lies, okay?
What is it?
I saw you last night. I followed you when you left here. I heard you talking. That man is your father, isn't he? He sighed.
Yes, it was all a lie, but I only did it because I'm in love with you. I didn't want you dating a homeless boy.
I hesitated for a second. You're in love with me? He reached out and took hold of my hands.
I have been in love with you since the moment I laid eyes on you.
I could feel the heat in my cheeks as I blushed bright red. Promise me you will never lie to me again.
I swear.
Now I want you to do something for me.
What?
I want you to go and change into your real clothes, and I want you to come back here with your dad. I want my parents to meet the real you and your family.
But won't they hate me?
No, they won't. He looked unsure, but he agreed to do as I had asked. About 30 minutes later, there was a knock at the door. When I opened it, Toby and his dad were standing there. Hello, come in. I led them through to the kitchen where my parents were sitting having a cup of tea. Mom, Dad, I want you to meet Toby's dad. I could see the look of surprise on my parents' faces, but they quickly hid it.
Sit down, sit down. Let me get you a cup of tea.
Toby looked at me and I smiled at him.
Do you take sugar?
Toby's dad told my parents all about how he had lost his job, and that's why they had ended up on the streets. You could see that he was an honest, hard-working man that had just had a run of bad luck.
I might be able to help you out. We're looking for a handyman come gardener. I'm so busy at work that I never have time to get anything done around here. Would you be interested in the job? Yes. Yes, definitely. Thank you so much. I thought nobody would ever give me a chance again. Well, that's settled then. You can start on Monday.
Once Toby's dad started working, there was no need for Toby to be out begging.
I'm going back to school, Becky. Actually, I'm starting at your school.
When the other girls at school found out that Toby was my boyfriend, they were all really jealous.
I can't believe you're dating Toby. He is literally the kindest, funniest, and most handsome boy in the school. How did you get him?
I winked. I snagged him off the streets. They all started laughing, but little did they know that I wasn't kidding.